Are you here? Are you here? Are you here? That sounds kind of rhetorical. Let's try the interrogative. Are you here? Are you here? Are you here? Yeah, that's the way it should sound. Welcome! This is your announcer on the Paul Leslie Hour. And this is the fourth interview of Scott Kirby. Key West singer-songwriter Scott Kirby's releasing his 10th album on the Little Flock Music record label on March 27th, 2023. This CD, Dream of Your Life, was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee, but Kirby says he started working on these songs in Newfoundland back in 2019. Hey, real quick, you can keep up with us if you subscribe to Paul Leslie's YouTube channel and like the Paul Leslie Hour on Facebook. Can you do that? Thank you. And now let's get this show to the beach. Here's Scott Kirby in conversation with Paul Leslie. Not Charlie Rose. Paul Leslie. Similar, but in many ways different. Enjoy the show!
Well, Scott Kirby, we meet yet again.
And it's my pleasure.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
So we are on the day before the release of, this is your 10th album?
It is.
Dream of Your Life on Little Flock Music. How does it feel? 10 albums in the can.
It feels pretty good. I started in this business quite late professionally in my mid-30s, so I try to get an album out about every 3 or 4 years, and I got this one out just before the complete death of the album as we know it,
right.
And CDs, and the download code is on there as well. But I feel fortunate to be born when I was, to be in this music business during this time. It's obviously changing vastly with streaming sites, and I'm sure the next generation will figure out how to do it their way. But I'm happy to get this out. It's taken a bit of time with COVID and other things. It's taken a lot longer than normal, but very pleased to have it finally out.
Well, congratulations. I think the first record came out, Too Damn Yankee, in 1993.
Correct.
So this is 30 years of recording.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, quite a milestone.
That's the one thing about getting old, milestones.
Well, this particular album, it begins with a song, the liner notes say that it was born out of difficult times. What have you found is the best answer to difficulty or an obstacle?
The best answer to difficult times?
Yeah.
Well, in this particular situation, I had gone through a breakup in a relationship, and I was driving around the country on my first tour, and and then 6 months later, COVID came, and then all kinds of other things going on in the world. So that's when I started writing the song, but now I think of it more as a song of an optimistic song of getting through things. I don't think back on it with any negativity. I think of it as the first line. So this is a year to chase that sun. I think it's about getting through things, and the soothing effect of a great American road trip, which I do every year, and I would highly recommend to anyone else who's never done it to take a drive around this great country for a month or two. Very soothing experience.
Absolutely. Is there any part of the U.S. that you haven't explored?
The only state I've not been in is Alaska.
Okay.
I've only been to Hawaii once. The rest of the country, I think I know it pretty darn well. I mean, there's some states I've spent more time in than others, but I think I have a pretty good, short of being a cross-country truck driver, I probably have a pretty good feel for most parts of the country.
So that song is driving you away. Could you maybe give us a little taste?
You know, three or four of the songs in this album are written in an alternative tuning called Dadgad,
Right.
which really is. And this happens to be one of them, thank goodness. So it's an alternative tuning to what people generally play the guitar in, but Gabriel Donahue taught me this tuning about 20 years ago, and I've written quite a few songs in it, but I think the song goes. So this is the year to chase that sun. There ain't nothing gets the bustin' heart beating like an uphill run. Breath by breath, a little style and grace. It's the only way up when you've fallen this far on your face. So here I go, romancing the road. In Alabama, Louisiana, New Mexico. No looking back, there ain't nothing to say. I got a heavy, heavy load and I'm driving you away. Something like that.
Nice. Great way to start the album.
I thought it was a good choice for the first
Yeah.
tune, yeah, with what we've been through as a country and a planet the last 3 years.
Right. The album does have kind of a travel feel to it. I can't explain why exactly. Maybe because the first time I listened to it all the way, I was driving.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
That makes sense.
Would you say that maybe there could be part of the reason for that being confined for a while?
I think it's two things. It's definitely that. It's, you know, the way I live my life and those of us who do this for a living live our lives. There's a tremendous amount of travel, and I've been living the last couple of years for a few months here overseas in Europe. I do a tour to Ireland every year, and moving forward, I think I'll probably be living in France 4 months a year. So my life has changed at my advanced age, where I'm living in different places. I observe different things. So I think it's only natural that this little batch of songs kind of reflects that. Not to mention my family's background, being from Newfoundland. So I think there are 5 or 6 songs on here that touch on other places. So yeah, that's a good observation.
There's some great photographs. I mean, not just the cover, but there's some really good photos in the album jacket.
Thank you. This photograph I took several years ago with my phone in Villefranche Harbor, this little harbor town I live in near Nice. And when I looked at it, the first moment I said, you know, I walked out of a little restaurant and snapped a picture, and I got back to the flat I rented, and I said, that's an extraordinary picture for a phone, the depth of it. And I've showed it to a number of professional photographers, and they've all said it's a 1 in a million photo. It's luck. Between the moon, the lighting on the harbor, you could take 1,000 photographs with a real camera, and it wouldn't have any more depth and clarity. And it's just it's lucky. It was a lucky shot, and I've had more comments on social media about that album cover the last month or two than anything I've ever done visually. So I'm thankful.
Add photographer to the list.
Yeah. I think we're going to actually we've had requests to have a poster made out of it, So I think we will do that down the road.
Nice. What is one thing you no longer care about that you used to?
I still care about food, greatly. But I was thinking about this question when I was young. I loved food, and I ate too much food, and at some point in my life, in my 20s or 30s, I said to myself, particularly when I started touring, that food can't be that important. Going out to a beautiful dinner with friends, that's important, but the everyday thing of eating, I no longer care about in the sense, other than the sense of being fuel. So when I'm on the road, banana, yogurt, give me anything for fuel. And then if I get a night off, I'll go to have a fabulous dinner with people. I love food. But the everyday concept that food is eating 3 meals a day are all recreational experiences, I fortunately for myself, because I had grew up quite overweight, that I somehow left that behind at some point. And I think about that when I'm out on the road, I just need something to get me to the next show. And I guess I eat more like someone who's going to be playing an athletic sport. If I'm singing Peter Mayer and I joke about this because Peter loves food and he's a very healthy eater. Yeah. And when we tour together, he's got to have this special dinner an hour and a half, 2 hours before the concert. It's a big part of his thing. And I don't want that. I don't want a lot of food in me. I don't, we used to have a joke on his rider. He had, all kinds of vegetable dishes that he had. I had in my rider, I had one granola bar. We went to some theater once, and the theater manager said, "Well, you had a very simple rider, but your granola bar was in there on the TV." I said, "That's all I need, thank you."
Interesting. So you freed that part up of your mind so you can focus.
I read something when I was, I grew up, I was an overweight kid. My grandparents are extremely poor from Newfoundland, and my grandmother used to give me these sugar on white bread as a snack, if you can imagine. Yeah. With water sprinkled on it, and she did a lot of baking, and got me addicted to sugar at a very young age, which is a horrible thing. But at some point, I just learned that, I think in my 30s, that anything you eat that makes you feel bad, sugar makes you feel good for a moment or two, but if you eat 3 donuts, I guarantee you, everyone I know feels bad afterwards. So I just don't want to feel bad, particularly when I'm working and I've got to be energetic. And then on the recreational eating, I'm still very much a fan of, and can't live in a better place than France and Italy if you like to eat. But I usually limit myself to 4 or 5 recreational meals a week. The rest is the banana and yogurt or something that's gets me through. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself more optimistic or pessimistic?
Well, I think I am. A good friend of mine said to me once, a lot of people think you're pessimistic because I have a dark Irish humor. Yeah. I'm always cracking the dark side of jokes, but she said most of your catalog of songs are optimistic. Yeah. So I think you are a really optimistic person, and I think I'd have to be in this business for 36 years. How could one, this is a difficult business, and I have to be optimistic, and not to say that I don't go through periods of being not optimistic about right now, for instance, with a hot war in Europe. The possibility of probably the highest possibility of perhaps a nuclear exchange, and since the Cuban Missile Crisis, China and Russia, there's a global warming. There's a lot of things for young people to not be very optimistic about, but I think I am generally an optimistic person.
Was that, I think it was the morning song that just seemed full of almost youthful optimism.
It's almost delusional. I don't know what was going on in the morning I wrote that. It just came into this strange mood I was in, and it was a throwaway song. And when I took these songs to Nashville, Andy Thompson I remember playing the song, and I said, I don't know if we'll cut this or not, but I played it for him. He said he loved that song. And to this day, now that everything is produced and mixed, he still likes that song. But it is, to me, I said this is the kind of song John Prine might write if he were in a festive mood one morning. It's very tongue-in-cheek, but it has a message to it as well. So
Would you maybe like to give us just a little taste of that one?
it'll take me just 2 seconds. I'm in a different tuning.
No problem. What you said was pretty funny. Is it optimism or delusion?
Yeah. Okay. We call it the morning song. We didn't have a name for it, so we came up with the morning song. Woke up this morning to a big blue sky. All their kids are laughing, not a single one cried. I turned on the TV and nobody died. Why can't it every morning be like this? Got J-Lo in the backyard preparing a feast. And nobody's fighting in the whole Mideast. All their birds are singing Beatles songs in the trees. Why can't every morning be like this? Nobody's singing the blues. The only thing I hear is good news. Yeah, the planet's beginning to cool. I'm walking on the clouds in my blue suede shoes. No homeless, no disease. Plastic has vanished unexpectedly. Hey, Larry David, move across the street from me. Why can't it every morning be like this? And so on.
I like it.
Thank you.
It is. It's a very bright, optimistic song, but we need it.
We need it. We need it.
So the name of this album, and it is a great title for an album, Dream of Your Life. Tell us about the first time your eyes zoomed in on those words, Dream of Your Life.
It was 2 years ago, and I'd taken 2 months off to drive through Europe. And I'd rented an Airbnb in this town called Villefranche, which I had sailed into 25 years ago, magical place. Walked into this Airbnb, and you never know what you're going to get with Airbnbs, and it was on a big hilltop overlooking the Mediterranean. And I walked in at night, and there was a full moon rising out of the Mediterranean with the lights of Nice twinkling down below. And I mean, it was absolutely took me back. It stood there and awestruck by this view of this amazing place for $100 a night. And I walked into the bedroom, and there were white sheetrock walls, and in blue paint, in this lovely script in French, someone had painted this French saying on the wall, and I had no idea what it meant. And I Googled it, and it essentially meant, dream of your life, and your life will be a dream. And between the full moon that had risen up off the Med and that, I mean, right then I said, if this isn't a sign from the song gods to write this song, there's something wrong with you. So I think I knew immediately I was going to write this song.
It's a good one. It's a real good one.
Thank you.
And it is one of those magical titles. Had to be the title track.
Yeah. And I had another title track already.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I had a hat made with already printed with the other title track was going to be based on this other song on there that of my grandfather used to say as he aged, "You goes till you stops." That was going to be the title, and this bumped it off. So I think just as well it bumped it off.
But you have the hat still.
I have the hat still. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you play a little of just a taste of Dream of Your Life.
You got it. So this is Dream of Your Life, and I do want to make one notation of this. There are 2 lines in this that I took from a professor at Yale's book on France. And during COVID, I took a bunch of online classes, and 2 were taught by this gentleman, John Merriman, who unfortunately since passed away. But he allowed me to steal these two songs from one of his books, and he's credited on the cover. But I think that the two best lines in the song, "Here the France of butter gives way to olive oil," so I can't take credit for those. The warmest light washed over me halfway through my sleep. The words appeared upon the wall, Beta du Hori, a foreign script translated by a voice out on the breeze. Dream of your life, and your life will be a dream. Million distant candles lit that fort upon the hill, and no place I've laid my head ever felt as still. Born in battles on the sea, in the Renaissance. Dream of your life and that moon on Villefranche. Here the France of butter gives way to olive oil. Sweetest smelling lemon trees spring up from the soil, and pastels on a palette. The Chapel St. Pierre, to live a day like Monet brushing beauty out of thin air. Something like that.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Great. One of there's something that you did on a previous album. You usually always record songs that you wrote or co-wrote, but there's a traditional song on there. Now this song, I think I had heard it before, but then I really fell in love with it when I heard James Taylor doing Wild Mountain Thyme.
Yes.
So what made you decide to interpret this traditional tune?
I go, as I mentioned, I do a trip to Ireland every year with Gabriel Donahue, an Irish musician friend of mine. We take a group of 40 or 50 people with us every year. So Gabriel, about a year or so ago, suggested, maybe you should learn an Irish tune or two to play over there, or, to help promote the tour. And he suggested this song. And I had heard it, and it's been recorded in a million different ways. And it's funny you mentioned James Taylor, because the arrangement that sounded most friendly to my ear was his kind of Americanized or version, or however you want to describe that. But so I learned the song from his version, and my version is slightly different, but that felt the most comfortable for me. So I started playing it. I added it to my repertoire on the road for 8 or 10 months, and I had more people after the show asked me, "You really should record that song." Every night, someone, at least one person, sometimes 10 or 15 people. And after about 8 or 9 months of that, I was going to put another one of my songs on there, and I said, going to Ireland is a big part of my life these days. We recorded with a brilliant musician who played this lovely accordion part, and we decided to keep it and leave it on the record. So that's how it ended up on there.
Is it hard to sing a traditional song like that?
Well, I would have had a real difficult time singing it the way in some of the other Irish artists that record, because they sing it with a different time, and it's not. I'm not comfortable with that type of singing style. Where James had already kind of adapted it to his style, which is way closer to my style than some of the traditional. The chords are different, and the time and the meter and so forth. So yeah, I would have had a problem recording it, in some of the real old-fashioned style that it had been recorded in.
Could you play just a taste of how you sing it?
Yeah. All right, see, Wild Mountain Thyme. Oh, summertime is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, will you go? And we'll all go together to pick wild mountain thyme all around the purple heather. Will you go, lassie, will you go? Kind of like that.
It's really, it hits you, I think. We've talked about this a few times. You've always been kind of critical of your vocals, but you have a real soulfulness, and you're a great singer.
Well, you're very kind. It's never come easy to me, and for some reason, as I get older, it's might be getting a little bit better. Actually, I don't know why that would be, but I do know in my younger years I had terrible allergies for 10 or 15 years, and I was constantly stuffed up, and it was a real torturous time for me singing. And for some reason, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, they sometimes you grow out of those things, and they kind of went away. And that's I think probably the main reason I'm singing a little better than I used to.
You know, there have been singers, like I saw Art Garfunkel, I think it was in 2005, and then I saw him in his late 70s, and he was sounding better. So, who knows? Well, Bob Dylan has said that it's not the quality of the vocal, it's whether they're singing the truth.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to sing, and yeah, I think being honest and singing the truth is the authenticity.
Now, this isn't on Dream of Your Life, but I did want to ask about this because I was curious. You wrote a song that I really think is very clever, and I know a lot of people like it, Four Good Dogs, from the album Four Good Dogs.
Right.
You're a dog lover?
I had, I had 3 great dogs in my life. I haven't had a dog since Badger, my last dog, passed away about 6 or 7 years ago. I know I love animals, and I love dogs, and I don't have a dog since Badger died because that really putting dogs down is, I feel so bad for it's horrendous.
Yeah.
And then with all the touring I do and my changes in my personal life, it just hasn't been the right time for me to get another dog. And now that I live abroad so much, it just would be, it wouldn't be fair to the dog.
Right.
Flying. He doesn't get to eat the French food. He doesn't care about the view.
Right.
So, but I will have another dog, I'm sure. I will have that 4th good dog before my time runs out.
Would you say Badger is the most memorable dog of your life?
We had another dog before Badger named Spirit, who was also an unbelievable creature. Came out of a pound, like 2 years in a pound, so it had all kinds of issues. Very difficult creature. But an unbelievable animal. Badger was completely different. He came out of the pound at 6 months old, never had a bad day in his life. And because he was a chow mix, the trainer at the pound said, you might want to socialize him a lot while he's young because he could get really protective of his food when he gets older. So she said, you live in Key West, I would suggest walk him downtown and take him in and out of all the bars where all these people are around and get him socialized. And he was the cutest puppy you can imagine. He looked like a bear cub. In fact, his name was Bear when we got him. So the young year of his life, he was just used to every single person fawning over him, and that's the way he lived his life. He was the most social. You could leave him with anyone. He loved people. He was a little bit of a wild dog with that chow. He was a chow husky mix. So, but no, he was a great, huge personality. There were times I thought he almost would try to talk. We're getting to a long dog thing here. You might have to edit this.
No, I like it. And I know what you mean. I have experienced where it looks like a dog is trying to communicate something, and it's like, if I could, the dog almost, you swear the dog is thinking, if I could only just tell you this.
Yes, but true. But the reason we love them so much, I believe, I've thought a lot about this, is because they cannot talk. Because when you leave the dog at home and you go out to dinner and come back 3 hours later, and you walk in and they're sitting there and they've pooped in the corner and eaten up your shoe, if they could talk, they'd be saying, listen, you son of a gun, next time you leave me here for 3 hours, I'm going to rip all your clothes up. Don't do that to me again, or you're in big trouble. We wouldn't be so fond of them.
Maybe. Do you think it's wise for an artist to do things like discuss politics? Because we're living in such an age where people are, I think, they're more polarized than they were before. Do you think it's best speak your truth, or, and I know I see artists that do both. You can say they curb what they think a little, because they think, well, I gotta sell T-shirts.
That is a really great question, and I came from a very political family. My grandmother was involved in politics. My mother was like Richard Nixon's state chairman for New Hampshire when he ran for, or co-chairman when he ran for president. I have a political career myself, not as a candidate, but as a consultant and a campaign manager and a legislative assistant for the first 10 years of my working career. And yes, these are times like I've never seen or ever imagined. That's a really, people don't come to see us to listen to us talk about politics, but some things I unfortunately are happening in the country now that are so critical that you're almost complicit if you don't say something. And I'm not talking about elections necessarily, but facts have become secondary. A lot of this is political. A lot of these election, some of the elections are being questioned. And I worked in that profession. I mean, I have friends who were Secretary of States that ran the elections. So this is personal to me when it gets to that type of thing, because I have long-standing friends who worked in that, or were the people of the highest character I've ever known. They would never consider throwing an election, and I'm talking about on the state level, various states. But I think to talk about it in concert is a real, I don't typically do that, but then I think people like, say, Jimmy Buffett walks the line, where I don't think I've ever heard Jimmy talk necessarily about politics in concert, but he's not shy about doing charity events for candidates that he supports. Mm-hmm. So I think he walks a line there. But, I think, generally speaking, people don't want the people they count on for entertainment to be bringing that into their life when they come to us or go to a football game or a hockey game and have the athletes speaking out. And so it's a really slippery slope. I don't tend to ever bring it to the stage right. that I can think of. But it is an ethical situation that everyone needs to face, because if they feel so strongly about something, to almost remain quiet is a difficult thing to do. So on either side of the political spectrum. Right. So no, good question.
Good answer. You didn't say no comment.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Now, this is always a difficult question. And have you any regrets?
I have a handful of regrets. I'm not really a regretful person, but I do have my biggest regret, and I think about it all the darn time, is why did I not get to spend more quality time with my grandparents? I had two unbelievable sets of grandparents, and my parents were fantastic people too. They didn't like one another all that much, but they were great people. But my grandparents, I mean, I had two grandfathers, and I think about this all the time. Why did I, and you know, they lived till the time I was in my, 18, 20 years old, so I had the time, and they were really nice to me, but, I mean, one of my grandfathers was Admiral Halsey's launch driver in the South Pacific. He ran the Admiral's barge. He was a character. He was in both World Wars, an unbelievable character. And I was scared to death of him, probably wise. I didn't talk to him about the war, and people of that generation didn't particularly like to talk about it. But I think if someone had said to me when I was 12 or 13, you should go ask your grandfather questions. I mean, to look back on that now, here's a man who experienced things. All the history books in the world couldn't have replaced a few hours. And my other grandfather grew up in Newfoundland, so poor unimaginable. 10 kids living in this tiny house on the rocky cliff with fishing, and I was able to talk to him a little bit more about his life growing up. But and I can always remember when I tried to talk to him, what was it like, And he said, oh, it was cold, and you could see him looking back, and it was a cold, cold life. But the fish, there were so many fish then, you could walk on them. You could walk on their backs, and they fished out of dories. But there should be some high school mandatory class for people that have their grandparents alive, that they should be urged to, I think about what a wasted time that I never really got to do that. And maybe that's why I'm somewhat focused or obsessed with, learning so much about them now, and going back to Newfoundland. And so that's my biggest. I mean, I have some other little regrets. I wish I would have done things a little bit differently in my career, but that's the one that really, gets me.
Yeah, I regret that same thing. I did spend a lot of time with my grandparents, but it's something, and anybody out there who's watching or listening can learn from your answer there. I remember an interview that I did. Someone was talking about a great musician from New York, Eddie Davis, the Manhattan Minstrel. And they said when Eddie died, a library burned down. And that's
right.
Yeah, we can learn so much from the old ones.
Absolutely, yeah.
So much.
My grandfather, who was in the Navy, when I was 16, he was a car guy. Well, he was a mechanic. That's why I ran Admiral Halsey's launch. And he was a tough guy, and Halsey was his hero. Whiskey under the sink 3 or 4 times a day. A little slug of whiskey, smoked Lucky Strikes. Had a BMW motorcycle, a Mercedes car. He's a real car guy. My mother urged me at 16 when I got my license, you should get a little motorcycle. So I ended up buying a little motorcycle when I was 16, and it was a Japanese motorcycle. So I get the motorcycle, and my grandfather was a hero of mine. I went down there to show it to him. He came out and looked at it, made some disparaging remark about it being a Japanese, and he went in the house and slammed the door and didn't speak to me for a year. And I said to my mother, I'm 15 or 16 years old. I haven't, embraced the complexity of world history quite yet.
Right.
She said, "Oh, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Of course, he was in World War II in the South Pacific." And I said, "Well, he's got a Mercedes and a BMW." I mean, she said, "That wasn't his war. We'll get you a different motorcycle." So within about 6 months, I got a Triumph, and the first thing I did was go to his house and pull in the driveway, and he came out. "Now that's a motorcycle."
You had made amends.
Made amends. Thank goodness. I couldn't have lived with myself if he'd passed on before I hadn't, cleared that up.
Well, the name of the 10th album, out tomorrow, or if you're watching this today, Dream of Your Life. Such an evocative title. Is there a dream you still hope for?
I am so grateful. I went and looked at an interview you did with me 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Recently, and you asked me what I like to do in life in my time off, and I mentioned if I had a lot of money and I was really successful, I'd like to travel more and maybe live abroad, spend more time in Europe, and I said, wow, I said that 20 years ago, and and ended up doing that, and I'd like to keep playing music as long as I can, but there'll be a time when the voice or the hands go, or the lyrics, or I am so grateful. I've got perfect health. I watched an interview the other day with Peter Mayle, who wrote A Year in Provence and a number of other books, and it's an old interview. And Charlie Rose said a similar question. He said, "Well, I'm the luckiest person in the world." He said, "I do something every day that I get paid for. I live only in the places I love, and I have perfect eyesight." So when you get in your late 60s, what else is there? So
right. Absolutely. Well, before we go, would you like to maybe noodle around or give the people out there just a little something to send them on their way? Totally up to you.
Let's see here. I'm gonna do a little bit of a song I wrote with Andy Thompson called Out on the Blue.
Okay.
I've always had a great love for the ocean, and Andy and I wrote this, and this just really, no matter where you are in the world, it just seems almost more peaceful out on the water. So we'll play a little bit of this, and thanks for possibly buying the CD. Sip of tequila, taste the sweetness on your lips. Let's pass the tourist traps and give all the slip. We can get lost tonight to see where this all leads. I'm fine anywhere, all here with me. Down in Old Town they're all reeling in that all-night party feeling. Well, they're carrying on till the break of dawn. Out on the blue, everything is alright. Clothes dancing in the moonlight, gently rolling in the waves. Out on the blue, we're living life in our time. Final breath of the sunshine, you and me will be drifting out away.
Scott Kirby.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
See you soon.
See you soon.
The Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.